What's up, honors, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 6 of Prototype, the series where in each episode we check out a different prototype, animatronic, or display from Spirit Halloween. And for today's video, I've got yet again another very interesting animatronic. This one is of course known as the Ghostly Witch of Fire and Ice. And this one's an interesting one because this one was very close to being sold at Spirit Halloween, since it had a whole page up on Spirit's website, which was live for many different years, but this one unfortunately never came into stock and was never sold. Which overall really sucks because usually I'm not the biggest fan of witch animatronics, but honestly this one here looks really unique and it would have been one that I think would have been a really cool one to see in 2014, the year it would have been sold. So anyways, today we'll be checking out everything about this awesome animatronic. So anyways, with that said, that's enough talk for the intro. Let's of course get ready to talk about this awesome animatronic. Alright, so of course starting off with just some of the basic information we know about this. Of course, it was known as the Ghostly Witch of Fire and Ice, which I think is a nice name. The Fire and Ice part, it kind of has that like fire and ice light in it too, which we'll talk about more in a minute, but yeah, it's a pretty good name. This one would have of course been sold in 2014 and would have been an online exclusive. Of course, the price for this, it would have been $230, which for what this is, it's not the worst price ever. It unfortunately would have been a smaller animatronic, but still not too small. Would have stood 4.9 feet tall. It of course was made by Gemmy, which this looks like a great Gemmy item. Honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of lots of Gemmy's modern day stuff, but this looks pretty good. And of course, it was never released at Spirit Halloween or any other retailer, but it did become a Spirit exclusive, so no other retailer could really sell this. Anyways, that's pretty much the basic information we know about this. Very similar to lots of other animatronics. We don't know too much, but yeah, overall this animatronic looks cool. So let's of course get into the next part of this video, which is of course talking about its animation, features, design, all that. Alright, so taking a closer look at this animatronic, let's just talk about the design of it because it looks awesome. Of course, the one thing is of course the cauldron there on the one side, which is nothing special. It's just that typical cauldron, not too much detail on it. But of course she has the stick right there, like she's stirring the cauldron. But then look at the witch herself. I really like the design they went with. Seems like every witch out there, it's usually the exact same clothing, you know, it's all of that black design. Usually it's the green face. It's always just very like stereotypical witch designs, but I appreciate how with this one they gave it that nice white look, which I think looks a lot better in my opinion. And yeah, I like the way that they designed the clothing too. It has like lots of these rips and stuff there on the arms, and then yeah, the hat up there looks nice. Like the hat, it has this sort of like dirty up look and kind of like the rest of the clothing like that too. So they really put some good attention to detail on this. And then yeah, unlike typical witches, for this they of course gave the skin that more like white color, which I appreciate. Typically what they like to do is they give it that green design, which I think is a bit overrated. I definitely like when they try and go with these different looks, and this one really turned out well. Then yeah, it has the white hair too to go along with the white vibes. Then like any other witch, of course, she's holding the book right there, which isn't anything too crazy, but it does add something else to the animatronic, I guess. So overall, design-wise on this, it looks awesome. I love just, yeah, all the attention to detail on this and just that overall white design. It's not the typical green and black design we usually get, so overall, a great design, and I'd like to see them try to make more witches like this again. But anyways, that's of course its design. Let's talk a little bit about its features and animations because there's a lot going on here. Unfortunately, this one we do not have video of since there's never been a demo video made and there's never really been any videos of it online. But what we do know is there would have most likely been some sort of animation there in the cauldron where she would have, of course, stirred the stick around. We know that. Then just from how this is, we can also assume that probably would have had mouth animation and potentially head animation. Kind of looks like she might have had that. And pretty much I think that's all the animation it would potentially have. So probably has some sort of head animation and the cauldron where she's stirring. So nothing too crazy, but it seems like it would have had some decent animation. But then features for this, there's a lot of cool stuff going on. First of all, of course, the cauldron right there would have had the fogging effect, which I know they already include in a lot of other cauldrons, so it's not too unique, but I do always like a good fog feature in an animatronic. It just really makes some of them better, like Cerberus, which I have. I really like the fog effect on him, and yeah, some of the other ones out there, so I do like that they add that fog effect. And then yeah, the other features this has is really just all that lighting, which honestly, lighting is one of the most important things in animatronics in my opinion. Animatronics that really have a big focus on lighting I typically like a lot more. In this one they really put a big focus on that. Of course it has lights in the cauldron, which really helps it give it that fiery sort of look, more like a potion and not just like fogs coming out of it. Then of course she has the light up eyes right there, which there's so many animatronics out there with light up eyes. I don't think they need to include on every animatronic, but for this one it doesn't look too bad. Kind of gives her that more possessed sort of look with the white eyes. But then the really cool detail about this is that nice fire and ice light inside her, which I'd love to see them use more with animatronics, some cool lighting features like this, because it can kind of give some animation too to the prop in a way. The lights in this look awesome because, especially with that white clothing, it just really picks up those colors nicely and just makes it better. Kind of makes her look more like a magical sort of creature too, and not just, I don't know, your standard witch. So overall, I do really like that lighting effect. It looks awesome. So overall, design, animation, feature-wise in this, there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm a big fan of lots of stuff that's included in this, and really sucks that this was never released because, yeah, this thing looks insane. Alright, now get into the last part of the video. Let's just talk about some fun facts and some interesting details about this animatronic. Of course, the first thing I want to talk about is how this thing reuses a lot of different parts from other animatronics. Of course, for the cauldron and the stir stick, she of course reuses that from the Cauldron Witch from 2008. It's pretty much the exact same design, and I think it's kind of interesting. Like, I guess parts like this, you don't really need to make a new one every time. You can just reuse it from other animatronics, but it's kind of interesting that they reuse that exact same design. And then also the head sculpt for this was of course reused from the life-size witch with Flaming Cauldron. So that's a little bit interesting. Typically, I'm not a fan of when they reuse face designs for animatronics. I know it rarely happens, but I just like when they make a completely new, unique face for it. But yeah, of course she reuses the face from that witch, which I don't think is the worst ever, you know. I do like how it looks on this witch too, so overall just an interesting thing. And the last interesting thing which I want to mention that I talked about earlier in this video is how she actually had a page up on Spirit's website, which is crazy. And typically when animatronics get a page on the website, it means that they will be released, because it means that they're probably gonna make this page alive soon since they're already putting all this effort into it. And unfortunately, we never saw this released even though we have the website here, but I'll of course put the photos on screen. Of course, first right here you can see is just the sort of cover page for the animatronic. We of course get a photo of it there, the price and the name. Then the other photo right here, you can see the actual whole page that this animatronic had. And we can of course see some of the details talked about, like on and only. Then yeah, we have a description for it and everything. And, yeah, photos. So it's crazy. This animatronic, they had this whole page just ready to have it listed on the website, but yeah, just never end up getting released, which sucks. Very rare that these animatronics that become prototypes ever get a page on the website, so this is really cool to see. Anyways, with all said, everyone, that of course finishes it for today's video. Hopefully you did enjoy. Of course, it's another awesome animatronic, and tell me down below your thoughts on it. Anyways, I'll of course see you all in the next video, which is coming sometime soon. Probably have another one out in a few days. But anyways, please make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and of course, till next time, goodbye.